everyone. Thank you, Lisa, for inviting me and for the one. By the way, do we have a super CEO in Lisa Nelson? I mean, you just do an amazing job, Lisa, and it's just so wonderful, the transformation of ALEC into one of the great policy powerhouses in the world. So Lisa asked me to talk a little bit about the book that Art Laffer and I wrote on Trumponomics and how these ideas are working. And the reason it's important is that these ideas that Trump has put in place at the federal level have so much applicability to what you all are doing in the states. So it's a great way to look at what states should be doing and what they shouldn't be doing. And by the way, I was fascinated by Mr. Ball's presentation about humility. And I've always, when you think about Donald Trump, the word humility doesn't always come to mind. But I actually was with him. This was about a couple months ago. He had invited me to a dinner, and he had a dinner with a bunch of the governors. In fact, I think Governor Ducey was there at that dinner, and there were about 50 people at this. It was a fairly small dinner, and Trump was just speaking off the cuff. He didn't have a teleprompter or anything like that, and he was having a good time. And he looked out in the front row, and he saw a bunch of the governors were, drinking their glasses of wine while they were listening to him talk. And so he turned to one of the governors. He said, "Hey, Governor," he said, "do you know that I don't drink?" And by the way, did you all know that Trump doesn't drink? And so this governor kind of nodded his head, and Trump said, he goes, "Can you imagine me if I drank?" Which I thought was one of my favorite lines. So the guy does have some humility. I'm going to kind of go through some of the ideas that we've done. By the way, there will be an exam at the end of this presentation. And on a serious note, I'm happy to make these charts available, Lisa, to anybody who wants them. So let's put them on the ALEC website so people can pull them down, because it's important that we defend the ideas that work. And not everything that has happened under Trump has worked, but boy, so far it's worked awfully well. So let's kind of go through this, and let me start with this. People always ask, well, gee, why is it that people were so angry in 2016? Why, after we had 8 years of the Messiah, everybody should have been so wonderfully happy. And yet, and you hear this all the time now, that Democrats say, oh, this is just a continuation. The Trump boom is just a continuation of the Obama policies and so on. And the fact is, the economy did not do well in the Obama years. And we need to understand this history. And if you look at the recovery, this is just looking at recoveries. We've had 9 recessions since the end of World War II. And so what we did is we looked back and looked at each one, and we looked at how did the economy perform, because obviously when Obama came into office, the economy was in a terrible shape after the Great Recession and the real estate meltdown. And so we just compared the Obama recovery versus the previous 9 recoveries since we had at the end of World War II. And what's so interesting about this, yes, we did have a recovery. And by the way, this has been a long recovery. It's now 10 years old. The recovery began in June of 2009. We're in August of 2019 now. So it's been one of, if not the longest recoveries. It's been durable. But if you look at the recovery through the Obama years versus other recoveries, you can see why people were so angry. That the recovery was only about half as strong. We grew at 15% over the first 7 years of this recovery under Obama. The average was about 29%. And that is to say, if we had just done average, we would have grown probably twice as fast. And I like to compare Obama with Reagan, because Reagan also entered office during a period of great economic crisis. Many of you may be old enough to remember 20% mortgage interest rates and 15% inflation. The American economy was deindustrializing. And you can see the difference between the Obama performance and the Reagan performance. And this is very embarrassing to some of my liberal friends, but it happens to be true. The economy grew at 4% under Reagan, and it grew at 1.9% under Obama. And that's because they used diametrically opposite approaches to dealing with the economy. Reagan cut taxes, reduced regulation, restored sound money, tried to get government spending under control. Obama, you remember very famously in his debate with Jimmy Carter, Reagan said, in one sentence, Reaganomics, Government is not the solution. Government is the problem. That was Reagan's philosophy. Obama's philosophy was pretty much the opposite, right? And by the way, I would say the same thing of all the candidates who are running for president against Trump. You know, it's all basically whatever the problem is, there's a government solution. And so we would have had a $3 trillion larger economy by the year 2016 if we had a Reagan-style expansion rather than the Obama recovery. And I would submit to you that's one of the reasons people weren't feeling the love of the Obama years, because so many areas of the country were left behind. If you lived in Hollywood, or if you lived in Silicon Valley, if you lived in Wall Street, or certainly if you lived in Washington, D.C., the economy was booming, but not so much so in other areas. So what is the essence of Trumponomics? And as many of you know, Larry Kudlow and I and Art Laffer were very privileged to serve as senior economic advisors to Trump during the campaign. And by the way, how cool is it that the most important economist in the United States of America today is Larry Kudlow? I mean, it's just that's just an awesome thing. Larry's my best friend, and I can't imagine a better economic advisor than Larry for Trump. This is one of the charts we showed Trump. You know, this is the national debt. And by the way, just so you don't think, one of the things I love about ALEC is we are not a partisan organization. We're not a political organization. We believe in the power of these ideas. One of the most important ideas is economic growth. That if you can grow, and by the way, this is, I think, the essence of what Trumponomics is about. If you grow the economy faster, if we get out of that rut of the less than 2% growth that we had under Obama and we grow it to 3 to 4%, that makes all the difference in the world. And so many of the other problems that we have to deal with, whether it's income inequality or poverty or the problems in the inner city or the miserable schools that we have in this country, or as you're looking at here, the debt and the deficit, these problems are a lot easier to solve if you have economic growth. And so what you're looking at here is our national debt as a share of our GDP. And by the way, I don't know how you all feel about this, but I feel betrayed by the budget deal that was signed into law last month. The Republicans are spending like drunken sailors, and I cannot defend the Republicans on that. And you can't blame Democrats for that deal, because for the last 2 years, Republicans have run the House, Senate, and the White House. So I'm not unapologetically pro-Republican. The Republicans are spending money like drunken sailors. But one of this is, you can see what happened with the debt under the last term of Bush and then the 8 years of Obama. We doubled the national debt. That's a big problem. By the way, by show of hands, how many of you would say you're very concerned about the national debt? I mean, hopefully every hand went up. It is a very troubling trend. And I would say it's not a crisis right now, but look at the projections. This is what Trump inherited. That is to say, if we just stayed on the current course, the debt would have gone through the roof. We would have been 150% of GDP, and then we'd start to look like Greece and Puerto Rico and Argentina and Venezuela. So we couldn't go in that direction. And what we showed Trump is, look, the projection is the economy is only going to grow at 1.9%. That's what the Congressional Budget Office is saying, 1.8 to 1.9%. That's their standard projection for the U.S. economy. And we said, hell no. This is America. We're not going to grow 1.8, 1.9. We're going to grow 3, 3.5%. We used to tell Trump, I mean, this is one of the things I love about him, his optimism. We used to say, you know, Donald, we called him Donald during the campaign. If you do, you know, the deregulation and this and that and all these other things, we think we can get that economy growing at 3 to 4%. And you say, I want 5%. I mean, that's one thing I love about Trump. But if you just put in 3% growth, look that's the blue line, you actually see the debt starting to fall. So we need to have the economy grow faster. By the way, one of the ways we're going to need that is we're going to need more immigration, but it has to be legal immigration, not illegal immigration. Legal, right? They have to come in legally. So next. I just love this. Is there a Trump effect? I mean, I did my penance for 2 years. I was with CNN, and so that was an unhappy experience for certain. And they just would bash. I mean, it's become the Hate Trump network. And every night they would just bash Trump. And they were very confused about the fact that, you know, this president who was going to cause a second Great Depression if he was elected. Remember that, by the way? If Donald Trump is elected president, he's going to cause a second Great Depression. That's what people said. And then you have this booming economy, and every month we got more and more jobs, and you know we have today 7.5 million more jobs than people to fill them. Is that amazing? That's that's more open jobs than there are in the entire population of the state of Indiana. I mean, that's an incredible thing. By the way, there are only 6 million unemployed Americans. So if, I'm not great at math, Lisa, but I think I can figure this out. If you have 6 million unemployed people and you have 7.5 million unfilled jobs, that means if we put every single American who is looking for a job into a job, we still have 1.5 million jobs left over. Thank you, Donald Trump. So anyways, the Democrats are having a hard time figuring out, liberals are saying, how it is this president who is going to cause Great Depression has caused this, incredible revival of the economy. And so, they're now saying it's the Obama thing. And I was on CNN about 3 or 4 months ago, and they said after a great jobs report, do you think, Steve, this is just the Obama effect? And I said, absolutely, it's the Obama effect. It's the effect that Barack Obama is no longer president. That's why the economy is booming. Anyway, I mean, these are kind of fun ones. Look at what happened look at the top one there, small business optimism. Because, we're a nation, 8 million small businesses in this country, 8 million small businessmen and women, and they are, in my opinion, the spinal cord of the American economy. They're the people who make it work. And so, this is a poll that's been done for 50 years by the NFIB of small business optimism. And you see where the line just goes straight up. By the way, the blue is under Obama, the red is under Trump. And that poll was taken literally 48 hours after the election. 2 days after the election. And I've talked to the people who did that poll. They've never seen anything like that, ever, in the history of that poll. It's just, the number just went straight up. And by the way, it's remained high ever since. So that's a great one. The consumer confidence, you can see the same thing. The other one I love is, how do you rate the American economy? How do you rate it? This is another question that's been asked for 50 years. Throughout the Obama presidency, the average rating was about 35 to 36% of Americans rated the economy as good or great under Obama, 35 to 36%. You know what that number was as of the middle of July this past year, 4 weeks ago? I haven't seen the latest poll. 71% of Americans rate the economy as good or great. So there is an effect that people are feeling, and it's because of policy changes. So very quickly, oh, by the way, this is one I love. Remember when a month before the election, Barack Obama gave a very famous speech, and he was very critical of then candidate Donald Trump. Said, Donald Trump says he's going to get the economy growing at 3 to 4%. Donald Trump says he's going to bring all these manufacturing and construction jobs back. How is he going to do that? With a magic wand? Well, ladies and gentlemen, I think maybe he does have a magic wand, because look at what's happened with construction, mining, and manufacturing jobs in America. Look at the U-turn effect of that. These are the blue-collar jobs that we're missing in America. And by the way, Trump is the president of working class Americans. He is the one who has done more for, that's why I get so annoyed when people say, oh, he just cares about rich people. No, I spent a lot of time with this guy. He cares about the working men and women who are living on middle class salaries, who are working hard 40 hours a week to make sure that they get a pay raise. Incidentally, I don't know if you saw the most recent data, wages are up now almost 5%, and they recalculated the numbers for 2017. The biggest wage increases in 20 years for middle-class Americans. The Wall Street Journal, by the way, showed a month ago that the biggest wage gains for Americans have been the people at the bottom, not at the top. So we are reducing income inequality through growth. Now, by the way, this is just you've all seen this. I mean, Trump talked about this last night, but isn't this amazing? You've heard this 100 times, but I'll just say it again. Under Donald J. Trump, we have the lowest Black and Hispanic unemployment rate ever recorded. Lisa, I would submit it is our ideas that help minorities. It is our ideas of freedom and free markets and lower taxes and all these things. They help the people at the bottom. I'm particularly proud of this. I think it's just awesome. Okay, how did it happen? It didn't happen by accident, right? This just didn't happen by accident. Number one, Donald Trump is a deregulator. Look at what's happened. Look at the regulation trend under Obama, and look at the almost 35% reduction in regulations. By the way, can you all try to do that in your states? Well, how about a 35% reduction in regulations? This, I think, is maybe the single most important thing Trump has done to help the economy. Get government off the back of our businesses. And by the way, this doesn't mean we don't want clean air, that we don't want clean water, that we don't want safe marketplaces, that we don't want financial security. We want all of those things. We want to make sure that the regulations are smart and not inhibitors to growth. This is my favorite. Some of you have seen this before. This is Time magazine cover from a year ago, and I love this one. I have this the big placard on my wall at my office at Heritage. And for those, if you can't quite read it, it says The Wrecking Crew, and those are Trump's heads as wrecking balls, how Trump's cabinet is dismantling government as we know it. Absolutely is. That's why we elected the guy, right? I mean, he is dismantling government as we know it. That's called draining the swamp, and we need to do more of it. He is the deregulator in chief. Taxes, this is something Jonathan Williams and I, and by the way, I want to do a shout out to my great, great friend, Richard Vedder, who's taught us this lesson over the last 50 years. Richard, I love you, and I love what you've done for our country and taught us economics. But this is the lesson, that when you lower tax rates, look, the blue line is the tax rates over time. Reagan cut the rates from 70 to 50 to 28%. The red line is the share of taxes paid by the rich. Isn't this amazing? And by the way, you see the same effect at the state level. Cutting tax rates led to more growth, which led to more rich people. There's nothing wrong in this country getting rich, and you had actually more revenues from rich people. The rich paid more when we cut taxes, not less. I love that. This is the Trump tax cut. By the way, it wasn't just corporations. Every one of those 8 million small businesses in the United States got a tax cut as well. We went from the black line as the 40% tax rate that we charged in the United States over the last 30 years. Those green pillars are the average of China and Mexico and India and Germany and France and Spain and Australia, all the countries we compete with. And to make a long story short, look, the rest of the world was engaged in Reaganomics. They were cutting their tax rates aggressively, and they were doing that to steal businesses and jobs from America, because they realized, hey, if we have lower tax rates, we can get these jobs and businesses to move out. And that's what companies were doing for the last 20 years. And we showed, by the way, this is one of these charts we showed to Donald Trump 4 years ago. We said, we can't do this anymore. We're at 40%. The rest of the world's at 20%. That's like a 20% Head Start program for every country we're competing with. And then Larry put it in language Trump really could understand. He said, this is like putting a 20% tariff on our own goods and services. How stupid is that? And Trump looked at this and, we said, Donald, we think, you should cut that top tax rate from 40 to 20%. And this is one of my favorite moments with Donald Trump. He sat back and said, I'm not going to do that. We said, we got to cut the rate to 20%. Look, we got to be in the, he goes, I want 15%. I want 15. It's the first time anybody ever got to the right of Larry Kudlow and I in cutting tax rates, but we did it. We got the rate down to 20%. And by the way, don't believe for a minute that this was just a big tax cut for corporations. This is the reasons that you have the surplus jobs. We're sucking capital in from the rest of the world. This has been a phenomenal success. And it's not for rich people, it's for working class Americans. You heard, by the way, Lisa, how great was Rick Perry the other day? I mean, I love this guy. He has done an amazing job. I'm not going to go over this too. He is exactly right. For the first time, as he said, for the first time in 50 years, America is now energy independent. We are producing more oil and gas than we are selling. That's an awesome thing. And you can see the blue line is our production. The red line is our imports. The imports are falling, which is great. This is just a fun one, if you don't mind. This is a picture of the Marcellus. Who here is from Pennsylvania, Ohio, or West Virginia? Raise your hand. So I was just in Pennsylvania. I mean, Pennsylvania's going gangbusters. Same thing with Ohio because of the Marcellus Shale. They are. If you live in Pennsylvania, Ohio, in West Virginia, you are in the natural gas capital of the world. And so this is a great little testament to the power of free markets. So you can see the states. You can see Ohio, West Virginia, Pennsylvania, and then up above Pennsylvania is New York. By the way, who here is from New York? New Yorkers? I'm sorry. It's a bad situation. So, those red and blue dots, that's where the wells are. That's where they're drilling all the oil and gas. And, so Ohio, West Virginia, Pennsylvania, they're going gangbusters on this, creating hundreds and thousands of jobs and billions of dollars of GDP. But New York, under Cuomo, they don't allow fracking, they don't allow drilling. Did you know that? They won't allow it up there, which is a damn shame because a lot of the Marcellus Shale actually goes up into upstate New York where they really need the jobs. So this is so wonderful. You see how all the wells, you see they're right on the Pennsylvania-New York border? You see that? Is capitalism a wonderful thing? You know what they're doing? They're drilling down in Pennsylvania. They're going horizontally under New York, and they're taking out all their gas and oil. I mean, it's just a wonderful thing. And the eggheads in New York are losing all the jobs. Energy costs are falling. You know, oil and gas is where we get our energy. This idea, the Green New Deal, this idea we're going to go to 100% renewable energy is maybe the most dangerous economic idea I've heard in a long, long time. I'll show you our air quality is getting better even as we produce more. We believe in clean air and clean water, right? We are environmentalists. We just want to do it in a way that produces, you know, that doesn't dismantle our economy. We have reduced every major pollutant, lead, sulfur, carbon monoxide. This is a great story of achievement. We can be a powerhouse economy and not dismantle our economy and protect our environment. By the way, you know, go back. Secretary Perry was exactly right. Of the 40 countries that have signed the Paris Climate Accord, not one of them is keeping their promises. And Secretary Perry was right. The country that has reduced its carbon emissions the most over the last 2 years, what country is that? United States of America. It's a wonderful, wonderful thing. It's because of natural gas. Finally, because I'm just about out of time, trade. I want to just talk for a minute about this. Trump is like, I'm a free trader. I think all of us are free trade. We understand, as Milton Friedman taught us, that when two countries or two people voluntarily trade with each other, they are by definition both better off. And we used to tell that to Trump, and you know, Trump is more in the protectionist camp, and I don't agree with him on a lot of what he's doing on trade. But one of the things he told Larry Knight, just go look at the evidence. He said, I just want a level playing field. I want to make sure these countries are playing by the rules. And we started to look at this, and we put this chart together with our friend Kevin Hassett, and it turns out Trump had a point, that we do have lower tariffs than almost all the other countries that we compete with. Now, you know, I think he's wrong. I think we've got to get U.S., Canada, Mexico trade agreement done. That was Ronald Reagan's vision, and we want to have North America as a free trade zone. So Nancy Pelosi has to bring that up for a vote. That's really important. But look at China. Look at China on there. Their tariffs are 3 times higher than we are. And Trump was right. We should force them to bring their tariffs down. I am a free trade person, but I got to tell you this. I think China is so out of control. We are in an abusive relationship. And I happen to support what Trump is doing on China. I really do. I think this is the time we stood up to China. And I think he's going to win. And I think he's going to force China to stop stealing. I think he's going to force China to reduce their tariffs. And at the end of the day, wouldn't it be a wonderful thing if we actually got both countries to reduce our tariffs? It would be great for the United States. It would be great for China. Incidentally, I think within the next 6 months, I think Trump will get a deal with China because it's killing the Chinese economy. And when that happens, you're going to see the biggest boom you ever saw. You're going to see a Dow 30,000. So we're going to get that trade deal done. And then finally, I'm going to say one other thing, and then I'll stop, Lisa, if I may. I'll just end with this. I mean, you guys have seen this 100 times. This is just, you know, the case for free market capitalism. It's the case for what we all believe in. And this is just a satellite photograph of North Korea and South Korea at night. And it's my favorite one-picture story of why capitalism and free enterprise is so much more effective and truly progressive than socialism is. And so you can see here, how many of you have seen this before, by the way? I bet most of you have. If you haven't, it's a satellite photo. It's about 15 years old. It's not even that recent. But look at this. The white splotches are the areas where there is light and there is economic activity. By the way, the big white splotch, that's Seoul, South Korea, which is an amazingly large metropolitan area, and it's bustling with economic activity. I was just there a year ago. And then North Korea, look at that. Look at that. North Korea at night is totally in the dark. That one little white speck, that's Kim Il-jung's castle. The rest of the place is in the dark. Now, what makes this such a great experiment? And the reason I love this chart, and I show it to kids all the time, because 52% of kids graduating from college now believe socialism is superior to free market capitalism. Ladies and gentlemen, you have to do something about your school systems if that's what they're teaching our kids. But in any case, so, I think this is so great because think about this. 50 years ago, North Korea and South Korea were the same in every single respect. Everything else is held constant. It's the perfect economic experiment. North Korea and South Korea had the same DNA, the same culture, the same language, the same geography, the same history. Everything was the same about the two sides of this peninsula. The only thing that changed was 60 years ago, South Korea became a free market capitalist country. North Korea went towards communism, socialism, Bernie Sandersism, whatever you want to call them, they're all the same, right? And this shows you so effectively the power of the ideas of free markets, doesn't it? And I will simply conclude by saying this. We are the true progressives. We are the ones who are for economic progress. And when you have free market capitalism, and this is a lesson for every one of your states, lower taxes, free trade, less regulation, and allow businesses to succeed, pro-business policies, we are the ones who put the country in the light, and they are the ones who put the country in darkness. Thank you very much.